This is a brief introduction to the markup that I give to sentences when I'm looking at the grammar. I do not do standard sentence diagramming. Here I've got the same sentence written twice. One is in standard diagramming, the other is just in plain old prose. There's an elaborateness to diagramming that some people think is great. It's a art of its own. I'm a bit less elaborate. Let me show you basically what I do. I mark out clauses, phrases, subjects, verbs. Getting this real briefly, looking at the verbs, I see stood and I'm marking that twice. To stand, that's an action verb. There's another verb here, was, that's a linking verb. Note that I'm underlining it twice and then I'm writing action verb or LV, linking verb, over that. The subjects for this verb happens to be this relative pronoun which. There's one subject, and then the subject of was is going to be a bit more complicated, so I'll wait on that. There is another verb here, the professor read Lear. Read, to read, that's an action verb. The professor, there's your subject. So there's the simple markup. I also make sure that I mark prepositional phrases. I do that with parentheses. So on the lectern, at the edge of the desk, and that looks to be all that there are in this particular sentence. I also like to show what the prepositional phrases modify. The entire prepositional phrase as a whole on the lectern is talking about tapping on the lectern. Where are you tapping? That's adverbial. Which stood at the edge, where it stood at the edge, this prepositional phrase is adverbial. Of the desk is modifying just the object. I'm going through this quickly because I'll do this in a bit more considered fashion as we move into the sample sentences. I'm just trying to show you my methodology here. What we also mark up are clauses, and I mark right here before the professor read Lear. That's a subordinate clause, starts out with that subordinate conjunction before. I usually circle that, and then it's a fairly straightforward sentence. The professor read Lear, direct object, Lear. Within that clause itself, there's a second dependent clause. This is a relative clause, which stood at the edge of the desk. Now, this entire relative clause, which stood at the edge of the desk, is modifying lectern. That's adjectival. Before the professor read Lear, tapping nails on the lectern, which stood at the edge of the desk, was standard practice. Is adverbial modifying the rest of the sentence. I won't draw an arrow. We've got this tapping nails, by the way. Tapping nails. Tapping, in this case, is a gerund, and verbals I usually underline and mark. The object of this gerund is nails, tapping what nails. So that's part of the verbal phrase, the gerund phrase, and since on the lectern is also modifying tapping nails, this whole thing is a gerund phrase. The gerund phrase ends up being the subject of was, the overall subject. And then we've got standard practice. Standard is modifying practice. Not too easy to draw that arrow, but let's just do that. And practice was practice. This is your predicate, adjective, predicate, noun. Was a practice. I'd call that a predicate noun, so I'll take out that predicate adjective here. At any rate, it's a subject complement. This is not standard diagramming that I'm doing. Sorry about that, Sister Hermina, Sister Elise. I like to stay a little closer to the sentence. It's elaborate in its own way, but I'm hoping it makes the logic of the sentence a bit more clear. We'll do more.